Welcome to another episode of the Nick and CJ show. We have a very special guest with us tonight, and I would call her a comrade and also someone whose work I admire. What's up, Nick? And I would like you also to kind of give your kind of words, your description of Margaret before we introduce her here.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this conversation. You know, we are friends with the amazing people at the Black Agenda Report, and we're going to talk about Ukraine. And I'm going to get Margaret in here. It's actually pretty shocking how how little people are getting this right. It's how many people in the fog of war is falling for the same nonsense. And there's a few people, a handful of people I've seen out here that's been getting this right. And I've reached out to all of them. Margaret Kimberly being another one. Once again, we love the people at the Black Agenda Report. Welcome to Revolutionary Blackout, Margaret.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back with you guys. It's been a while since I talked to either one of you. Right. And this is quite a moment, which all started 2 weeks ago today, 2 weeks exactly, when Russia recognized the Donbass republics and then went into Ukraine.
Yeah, it's just been shocking to me the amount of people who been getting this wrong on purpose. Like they it's almost like they think in order to be anti-imperialist, in order to be anti-war, they had to be like blindly wrong about Putin. Like you can call out Putin for what he's doing wrong without saying stuff that objectively not true. Like the war just started when Putin invaded. Like that's objectively not true. Like that's not true. Do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. Well, this all began, I would say for our purposes, this all started in 2014 when there was a coup against the elected president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. This was the Obama administration working with NATO. Ever since the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, the U.S. has sought to encroach upon Russia, literally, by bringing into NATO former Soviet bloc nations, former Soviet republics. So Ukraine was one they had their eye on. They had these so-called color revolutions. A lot of turmoil in Ukraine, a divided society. But to make a longer story short, the U.S. sided with the far right in Ukraine and installed an anti-Russian far right, some of them neo-Nazis, government. And there was a civil war. The Donetsk and Lugansk republics in the east of Ukraine did not want to be a part of this coup government. And so there's a civil war that's been going on since 2014. 14,000 people have died. So this is not, people didn't start dying in the last 2 weeks. And it was all caused by the United States. This crisis was caused by the United States. Ukraine has been a de facto U.S. colony since that time. There were peace efforts that were brokered by some European nations. The Minsk agreements, Minsk II, approved by the UN Security Council in 2015, required Ukraine to make peace with those republics. And the United States could have forced them to do it. But they didn't want to because it served U.S. interests to have a divided country under U.S. Control that they, may or may not have in NATO, but it could be used as a base of support for the U.S. and against Russian interests.
Yeah, and this is a question I've been asking myself, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And you kind of alluded to this. I love your take of saying Ukraine has essentially been a U.S. colony because I've been pointing out once again I don't like Putin. He's an anti-communist. He's not our friend, right? But people keep once again you can criticize Putin if you want,
right,
while still telling the truth about this,
yes,
right, and being accurate. So I see people all the time, and I'm gonna show you guys some clips, for example, right, where people are just blatantly getting this wrong, where they say Putin invaded a sovereign country. For one, they ignore the fact that they support a state like the United States, for example, who does this all the time.
Yes.
And I will pose the question. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear your thoughts. And I'm kind of asking people this because I'm working through this as well. Like, are you a sovereign country if your state was taken over by a coup that was led by the West and armed by neo-Nazis? Are you? And that's one thing. That's a question I'm asking myself. If you disagree with that concept, I would love to hear it. I'm gonna ask a lot of people this: like, are you a sovereign country? If based on the 2014 coup? But I want to get CJ in here. Do you have anything you want to add? And I would love to get Margaret thoughts on as well.
No, I'm seeing a lot of the same sort of thing where it's like it's almost like they're leftist except for when it's time for war. Like they're leftist on everything else except for when it's time for war. They have this saying, when I think it's called a PEP, when it's a leftist or progressive except for when it comes to Palestine. We have to call them PIPs. But we should have that for a leftist except for war, because that's what it feels like. And the thing is, Nick and Margaret, it doesn't take a lot to like just literally look up the story of what actually is happening, not listening, just taking the talking points from corporate media, whether it's press or cable. Instead of doing that, it's just literally just look it up, just get a different opinion, just go seek out a different opinion than what you're hearing, just so you can get a balanced take on it. That's my view, and I don't understand why more leftists don't do it.
Well, it's a crisis tells you who's really a leftist. And so in the past 2 weeks, we found out who's really on the left.
I love that.
Is not. And I believe, leftism 101 is being an anti-imperialist. You can't back the U.S. and NATO and the EU. You just can't. Those are retrograde forces. Those are the forces that destroyed Libya. Those are the forces that NATO is not our friend. And at the Black Alliance for Peace, people should go to our website, blackallianceforpeace.com. You can see our statement. African people and colonized people all over the world should not see NATO as their friend. European countries, they have in the U.S., in Africa, AFRICOM. Countries like France still has a huge military presence in African countries, controls the economies of their former colonies. All the acts of aggression, they all collude and work together. So you can't, if you're a leftist, but you're parroting the State Department line, well, then you're not really a leftist, is what I'm saying. So we can argue about the rightness of Putin's decision, but I don't think we can argue about who is ultimately at fault. It's the U.S., which since the fall, because the Soviet Union collapsed, was the only superpower. And that was a terrible thing for the world, to have only one superpower. And so the U.S. has been used to getting its way for the past 30 years. And they've been encroaching on Russia, putting these countries in NATO after promising they would not. Unfortunately, Gorbachev didn't get that in writing. So there's a lesson for everybody, right? And Putin rightly said, he said it's like a knife to the throat to have Ukraine in NATO, to have missiles in these countries bordering Russia. These are things that have heightened the conflict. The fact that the U.S.
With that said, Margaret, I want to get your response to this clip, because you said that. I think this is a great transition to show you guys that what she said is 100% true. And everyone I've seen report on this, who's pretending that this is a conflict that happened out of nowhere. Once again, I'm not just talking about MSNBC, guys. I'm not just talking about CNN. I'm seeing places like Breaking Points. I'm seeing Kyle Kalinske, and people like people who call themselves on the left, who are just straight up repeating NATO talking points, repeating talking points of the NATO capitalists want you to believe that this is a conflict that came out of nowhere. Now, the reason why I wanted to interject here, because this is kind of backs up what Margaret was.
I just saw this today.
You already muted yourself. You muted yourself before.
Yeah, I was going to say, since you've seen it, I was going to show this to our audience. Let me make sure the audio is fixed here. I'm gonna fix the audio. I'm gonna play this clip, and then I'm gonna get your guys' reaction to it.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission, having nothing to do with the merit and preparedness of the country to come in, would be to admit the Baltic states now in terms of NATO-Russian, U.S.-Russian relations. And if there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction, I don't mean military, in Russia, it would be that. So the way I look at the calculus here,
Oh wow.
And this is what we're talking about. I want to get your reaction, Margaret, but this is what you're talking about, right, CJ? And this is why my tolerance for people, and I had a lot of tolerance when this thing first started, because I know people were fact finding and information. But now at this point, Margaret, like you said, we're about 2 weeks in now. Like, if you're still repeating NATO CIA talking points at this point, no tolerance, because it takes literally 20 minutes at best to do research and see how much they're lying. But what's your guys' reaction to seeing that clip?
Well, I think it's funny. First of all, it said he's speaking at the Atlantic Council. Now, the Atlantic Council is NATO. It's NATO's think tank. It's their PR arm. And it's also interesting, it said 97, I believe.
Yes.
In the 90s, Russia was America's friend. Boris Yeltsin, who was Putin's predecessor, who picked Putin for the job, he was letting the U.S. do whatever it wanted in Russia. That's when oligarchs, we always hear about Russian oligarchs. In the 90s, that's when Russian oligarchs were running the country. And that changed with Putin. He actually came up against some of the oligarchs, put some of them in jail. And I'm not saying that makes him the quote unquote good guy. There's so many people. You say he's a good guy. No, none of these world leaders are good guys, actually, or good women. But at that point, Russia was the U.S. friend because it did what the U.S. wanted. The U.S. interfered in the 1996 election. It looked like Yeltsin was going to lose to the Communist Party. And Bill Clinton sent people in to make sure that Yeltsin won. And there was even a Time magazine cover story. You can find it, Yanks to the Rescue. And it's a caricature of Yeltsin waving a little American flag. There was even a movie about it. It was a comedy. But so those are the two things that I notice about the timing of that video and the fact that he was saying it at the Atlantic Council. So he was speaking the NATO line at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I wanted to say was, this is a point that you made earlier, Margaret, and I just wanted to piggyback off that. I feel like we're conditioned, like even leftists, people who call themselves leftists, even if you're not believing in the policies of the duopoly, you're still conditioned in the way you approach politics, the way you So I'm saying that to say, some people call themselves leftists. They can't have that nuance. They can't have that ability. They have to pick one or the other. So if they're picking Putin, they can't do that. So yeah, I agree. I wouldn't call them leftists, but it's like we're so like socialized, conditioned to have this. If they say one thing I'm not agree with, then that means I'm totally not on their team, and I can't even have the ability to analyze anything intellectually left leaning, right?
And this is what we've been talking about for a while. A lot of people who are deeply unserious about the issues, and it's been like a trend. Well, maybe for a very long time, but I noticed it maybe ramped up, where people don't even calculate where they stand on government power, workers' rights. These things have no reflection on what they consider left to be or right. They consider someone on the left if they consider them a morally great person. If you're a morally bad person, you're on the right. If you're morally good, good person, you're on the left. Has nothing to do with state power. Has nothing to do where you stand on foreign policy. Nothing to stand where you stand on worker power. It just vibes, bro. It just vibes. So as it is right now, they look at the situation in Ukraine and Russia. They hate Putin. They got Putin derangement syndrome. A lot of that is left over from Russiagate. So they're like, all right, Putin bad. Zelensky, because Putin is going after Zelensky. Zelensky is good. So I have to support Zelensky. But Margaret, I know you want to chime in. So I actually want to hear what your thoughts are. What are you thinking?
Well, there's a couple of things. It's first of all, American exceptionalism. There aren't many people who are really ready to analyze what the U.S. does around the world. You know, if you scratch most quote unquote leftists, you just find a liberal, and they believe that the U.S. is good, and all you need is some reform, some nibbling around the edges, and the country will be fine. So they don't have a problem with Obama destroying Libya, as happened in 2011. They don't have a problem with sanctions that kill people in countries all over the world. And they certainly don't have a problem with NATO. And if you're any kind of a leftist, you ought to have a very serious problem
with NATO.
NATO. The other thing is propaganda. We cannot underestimate. I have never seen I'm 62. I've never seen so much war propaganda in my life as has been directed towards Ukraine. Zelensky is the president of a kleptocracy. Ukraine is completely run by oligarchs and criminal gangs. And that's the truth. That's all he is. And I think, but you see the power of propaganda. So he was an actor. One of the oligarchs picked him to run for president.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
And the same people who 40 years ago, I remember all these liberals, oh, it's so embarrassing. Reagan was an actor. How can we have a president who's an actor? And they're actually saying, isn't it cool that Zelensky was an actor?
Margaret, they were just saying that about Trump. They were just saying, oh, he's just a reality TV star.
Exactly. And that was a reason to hate him. But now that's a reason to love Zelensky, a man who's clearly in over his head at this very important point in history. But I don't think we can underestimate, or rather, should I say, overestimate the amount of propaganda. And the state of corporate media, it just declines and declines and declines. And all they do is repeat what the State Department says. I remember the run up to the Iraq War, which is now it's 19 years ago. They would allow some dissenting voices in. The New York Times or the Washington Post would have someone in an op-ed saying, I think this is a bad thing. Or now it is done. Those narratives are completely excluded. So unless you have this high level of interest, unless you seek out voices like yours and mine, all you have is the New York Times and NPR and CNN. And the more you watch them, actually, the less you know, the more misinformed you are.
And we have these conversations. I don't know if you've had conversations with people plugged into this propaganda. It's like, I mean, and they are looking at you like you're weird. Like, what? You don't believe that Russia is this? You think you don't what? That's how they react. So go ahead, Margaret.
Well, that's what that's the evil genius of propaganda. So you so all these years you hear Putin is Hitler. So he's if someone's, I mean, that's the perfect way to silence people. Well, he's just like Hitler. So that means you can't listen to him. That means he has no valid points to make. That means the Russians don't have any legitimate concerns at all. He's just a dictator, a thug, a war criminal. And you don't hear anybody saying anything else. And Russiagate, this is the damage. Actually, this was the purpose of Russiagate. One, it was to absolve the Democrats of blame in screwing up and losing that 2016 election. But also, it was to strengthen the war party, which is bipartisan, and to make it impossible for not just for Trump, but for even if someone came to the presidency and wanted to change U.S. relations with Russia, to make it impossible for that to happen. So if people hear this over and over and over again, and you say, well, actually, no, because this thing is true, which they have never heard, yeah, then they do. They look at you like you have two heads.
Yeah, and I noticed, especially since you mentioned Russiagate, this is, as I see, the extension and the conclusion of Russiagate, right. Especially with the extreme xenophobia that we're seeing now. And I said it, like, you guys look at my old Russiagate videos. I was telling you guys, Russiagate is literally just xenophobia. That is exactly what it is. Now you're seeing there are Russian businesses right now, they're being vandalized, right? There are people that are talking about the harassment they are getting because of what's going on in Russia that has nothing to do with them. Meanwhile, they're 100% okay with American products, right? Even though Joe Biden funded multiple genocides. You don't hear anything about that. You don't hear nobody.
I mean, when I saw the story about the cat show, the International Feline Society saying cats from Russia couldn't be in their competition, I thought it was The Onion. I really did. I was like, oh my God, this is true.
You want to know what else is The Onion, Margaret? I saw a headline where there was a bunch of people, bunch of Israelis that was protesting, standing with Ukrainians while they were protesting on colonized Palestinian land. Like, they literally protesting on colonized Palestine. They're like, free Ukraine. It's like, are you guys serious? Like, this is the cartoon that we are living in right now.
Yeah.
George Bush came out like, you got to respect the sovereignty of the country. I'm like,
but I have a question. I want to interject the question. I don't mean to throw the thing off track, but is this connected to the inevitability of the United States losing its grip on, being the number one country, being the top at everything? Like, is this? I mean, because what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, is that the United States, literally by the end of this decade, China will be bigger. Their economy and China's economy is probably bigger now, is what they're saying, but they can't really, I guess, effectively confirm that. But they're saying by the end of this, right. But by the end of this decade, before the end of this decade, that like by 2028, like China's gonna be a lot bigger, their economy. So is this kind of like the bully throwing a tantrum?
Well, it is that, but it's also their, what's the expression? Payback is a B word. So the U.S. has been pushing other countries around, as sanctioning countries that, like Iran and Venezuela, to keep them from being able to sell their oil. Now they're running to Iran and Venezuela because we have to sanction Russia. We can't get any oil from Russia. Well, where are you going to get it from? So now they have to backtrack. The attempted coup against Venezuela, claiming the president isn't the president. Now they have people going down to Caracas, Venezuela, to try to cut a deal and get some oil. This overreach of the U.S. concerning itself with the affairs of every country. I was in Nicaragua a couple of months ago, that this little country with 6 million people, there are more people in New York City than there are in Nicaragua, but the United States is going to sanction them because they had the nerve to elect a left-wing government. And this is the end result of that effort to have, the term is full spectrum dominance, for the U.S. to dominate the world militarily, economically, and this all started because there was an effort to separate Russia from Europe. And Russia and China are already very close. They're like this. What did Xi Jinping say? We're better than allies. I mean, I don't know what that is. Better than an ally. What the heck does that mean? I'm digressing a little bit, but they ginned this up to try to get, and they succeeded in getting Germany to back away from they built this Nord Stream 2 pipeline, gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, which makes sense for Germany, but they wimped out. And so now they're going to buy fracked gas from the US, which doesn't make sense, which will cost more. But this is all to try to, but they're going to get what they were trying to prevent. I don't know if that's what you were leading to. So
yes, I was.
China and Russia are closer than ever. And these old, evil old Henry Kissinger, when Nixon went to China about 50 years ago, they were trying to keep China and the Soviet Union from becoming friends, keep Russia and China away from each other. But the U.S., all these aggressions, attacks on the rest of the world, in order to protect themselves, they're closer and closer than ever. And so any attack on Russia, it's also an attempt to attack China too. But you see, so these sanctions, they kicked out Visa. Visa and MasterCard said they're not going to do business in Russia anymore. What did the Russians do? They made a deal with the Chinese company, and they're going to have their own card to replace Visa and MasterCard. So this effort to try to keep it all together is actually leading to a faster breakup. France and Germany, the other European countries are so wimpy, but there's going to be a break in NATO because this is causing problems for everybody. Everybody's going to pay more money for gas. I don't care where you are in the world. You're going to pay more money for a loaf of bread. There's a lot of wheat coming from Ukraine and from Russia. So if you sanction Russia and if Ukraine can't sell its wheat, then what happens to the price? So ordinary people are going to start paying the price for this.
Yeah.
So inflation on top of inflation. Go ahead, Nick.
I think this is a good time, since you mentioned that, to bring up another psyop that I'm seeing. Because now they're expecting people to pay more money for gas. Essentially, not only are we sanctioning Russia, there's a sanction on the American people. Because now we have to pay more in gas, since essentially we were being taxed more by our government in order to justify the expansion of NATO.
Yes.
So I've been talking about this many times. No one is talking about what the fucking end goal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say that part for later. We're talking about the demands that Russians are putting that are 100% reasonable. And I would love to see if Margaret agrees with me on this. But I've been working through this. I've been trying to form my opinion on this. And I am not seeing why, if you're anti-war, if you actually care about the Ukrainian people, you just don't accept the fucking deal unless you have invested interest in the expansion of NATO, because like Margaret said, you actually believe in Western chauvinism. You believe in full spectrum dominance. That's why people are willing to allow the Ukrainian citizens to die, because that's just the end goal. But anyway, let me share. I want to share this because you brought up this is a good segue, because this is the psyop I've seen. I got another example I can show you guys. I didn't save it because I posted another one a few days ago. But you see, I pull him up because he's obviously a giant celebrity.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of giant. I'm gonna show you guys another one. I don't have it saved, but I can find it. Of the liberals that are using this talking point. That I'm gonna read directly from his tweet. Americans, we can endure higher prices for food and gas if that means putting the screws to Putin. Consider it a patriotic donation in the fight for freedom over tyranny. So you have a bunch of rich liberals that are telling poor working class people in the middle of an economic depression to pay more so we can expand NATO. I hope you guys understand that is what they're saying. I want to get you guys' reaction to that.
Well, it was kind of, the thing that was funny, he's, George Takei, he has huge following on Twitter, but he got ratioed for that. And I think that, and thank God, and that's but that tells you where this is going to end. So they've propagandized people, and they're flying blue and yellow flags and standing with Ukraine and hating on anything Russian. But if people are already complaining about the price of energy, about the price of gas. So that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you will see a change. You have, and Biden is already in trouble because he has failed to deliver. So people had a child tax credit, but it's over. Build back better, but it's not going to happen. The little bit of crumbs. Remember, people were going to get a $1,000 stimulus, but it was only $1,400. No student loan debt relief, no minimum wage increase. So a lot of
voting rights.
Yes,
voting
lot
rights.
Of people are suffering in a lot of ways. And if these events start to make people suffer, you can forget the blue and yellow flag. People are going to be mad. And I don't know what that will look like. It'll be, I think, very unpredictable. But it means the Democratic Party is toast for the near future.
Yeah, that's why they're increasing the police state, by the way, guys. I promise I won't get into my rants today about that, but that's why. Because they see it coming. Like
this is what we always say. I can say this part. We'll get into it more later. I know, rant a little more, but they know that people are not going to put up with this for much longer. So that's why they're militarizing the police. This is why the police, almost cannot differentiate between a police that's been militarized and an occupying force. Correct. Like if you just show the video without any markers on them, you wouldn't be able to make a difference. But they know people, Nick. I think that's what you were just getting to. They know people are not going to put up with this. People are going to get fed up, and it's because things are just going to get worse. These prices are going to keep going up, like with wheat. My wife was just telling me, like, orange juice is this cost and that cost. It's just outrageous.
Look at the likes on these tweets. And the thing is, Sabby was telling me this. A lot of these likes you see from these big resist accounts, like this call to activism trash. Like, what is this shit? Who's following this? 230,000. So I hear that a lot of these are bots, but some are not. And even if they aren't bots, that also show that this is the directive of the Democratic Party because someone has to program the bots, right?
Yes.
So 28,000 likes. So whether that bots or not, this showing that someone programmed a bot to like this. So this is the message that is coming from the establishment. Raise your hand if you're willing to pay higher gas prices if you want to hurt Russia. So you see, and this is my response. Very simple. This is the new propaganda. Like me and CJ has a show, the propaganda report, because we see it like that. Like,
well, I said, as soon as I was not aware of this particular Twitter account, but that has all the earmarks. Of
can you put it back up, Nick? Can you put it back up?
Democratic Party money. So it's somebody with a lot of money. So it's the Democrats. Obviously,
activism.
I mean, come on. It's like, raise your hand if you'd be willing to pay more. No, nobody legit.
Look at this.
Come on.
Look at this.
If you want to punish Putin for invading,
that is a Democratic operative account. Kamala Harris is back there tweeting back there. I bet.
Hold on. So your Twitter name is called to activism. We're in the middle of a pandemic where people don't have health care. Millions of people are about to go homeless. You don't say, and we need to get people health care. We need to demand, but none of that. Nothing about putting pressure on the Democrats. Look, it's all about Putin.
Yep.
What the hell is this? Anyway,
it's called propaganda. That's what it is. It's a well-oiled machine. And you mentioned, pandemic. That's not over. They're trying to tell us that it's over. So the same people who told us a year ago, you can stop wearing your masks now. And then the Delta variant came along and it was like, oopsie, we shouldn't have said that. So I'm personally not trusting them. I'm not believing that. But COVID is flying under the radar, I feel. We're being told it's over, but it's still almost 2,000 people dying every day from COVID. People with long COVID, people with all kinds of after effects, people who I believe have died. They say a heart attack or something else, but I believe that COVID is still killing a lot of people. And we don't know, like with Omicron, you don't know if this is the last variant. Nobody can tell you that. And we still have the same system in place where people don't have their health care taken care of. People are a lot of people are desperate. So, but you're right. That is why they, say, no, we're not going to defund the police. They want more police. They want a policed society, and they want a controlled society. So that's where big tech can come in. And the censorship can come in. So all of a sudden you can't watch RT anymore. Suppose you want to watch RT. What's wrong with that? But and liberals, and you can thank them for the censorship. They have been the ones demanding it. I don't know if either of you saw a thread from the actor Edward Norton a week ago. You should look for it. It was all about how the FBI and the CIA need to crack down on Russian agents. And it was like 10 or 11 tweet thread. It was long. It was insane. But it was very much where liberals are right now.
Absolutely. And to your point, let me just share this picture. To your point about people are still dying from COVID. This is a picture of somebody who I
Yep.
saw on the street collecting money for a funeral.
Yep.
And it's a testament also to our healthcare system.
Yep.
Because she didn't have the greatest health because of our system, couldn't afford healthcare. Like it's just terrible. But that I wanted to just shout that out when you talked about that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And that's such an important point because there are a lot of people, well, right wingers, and when I say right wingers, I'm talking about liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, because both of them are on the right. They both say that we need to move on and adjust to a post-COVID society, right? And I actually agree with this, right? Like, so if we gonna if we're stuck with COVID endemic, we got to have a post-COVID society. Okay, what does that look like? Because people are gonna get sick. So the argument they use, the people that will say, "Oh, Margaret, come on, we just got to move on. Why are you still talking about COVID? We got to move on. What else can we do? It's getting milder." Okay, if we know that people are going to get sick, maybe we should get healthcare to people. Maybe that is what a post-COVID society looks like. Maybe, just maybe, a post-COVID society looks like people not going to the fucking office. Now you got Joe Biden saying, "Yo, I want people to go back in the office because he want to sell commercial real estate." That's what's
right.
So that's what a post-COVID society looks like. This is why people frustrates me on the right. And a lot of people say, "Oh, we gotta move on from COVID. Oh, well, there's a pandemic. We know we can do about it. No, we can't get rid of it. Yeah, I agree. If we can't get rid of it, maybe we should change our society where we can take care of sick people, where people actually take care of their health. Like the idea of people not having healthcare in a post-COVID society should be ridiculous and illegal, immoral, and drop any source of the social contract that you have that you allow that to happen. But I want to get Margaret in here.
We need a publicly run. We don't just need Medicare for all and free healthcare for everybody. We need a publicly run healthcare system because neoliberalism and austerity have affected our healthcare system. I read, and when these little factoids, they stick in my head. In the 70s, there were 500,000 more hospital beds in the country than there are now.
Yes.
When we had a smaller population, we had 500,000 more hospital beds. That's one of the problems with COVID. People are dying because there aren't enough beds. There aren't enough staff. So instead of doing what China did, China, they've had I think 6,000, more than 1 billion people, 6,000 COVID deaths. We've had almost 1 million. They built new hospitals in Wuhan when the epidemic broke out to make sure they could get care to people, to make sure that those people who were sick were quarantined and weren't able to spread COVID. They have an amazing testing regimen where they can test millions of people at a time. So that's what the post-COVID society should look like. Instead of having, people waiting online in December to get an Omicron test. Now nobody gets tested anymore because they told that, we don't need to do that. Nobody talks about the filtration, about in buildings that could be changed to circulate the air and make the spread of COVID less likely. Nobody talks about, and they just pushed vaccines. The vaccine only plan did not work. And so then when it turned out there were breakthrough infections, then they pretended that didn't happen. But so then they tried mandates. So they're all over the place. Now there's no trust. But they still aren't treating this pandemic the way they should. So now they're just throwing up their hands and they're like, good luck with that. And we hope this is the last variant because you're kind of on your own. And the way the press, they protect Biden, in October, he was told, get test kits to everybody in the country before the holiday season. And what do? They wait, Omicron is over, but who knows? There could be something coming behind it. So they failed. I think what Biden has done is worse than what Trump did. There have been more deaths under him than there were under Trump. It's really disgraceful. Long COVID, people who, yes, for many people it is mild, but for many people it is not. There were people disabled by COVID, this brain fog, it's some kind of brain damage. So, and
I'll argue in a post-COVID society, maybe we should accommodate these people.
Absolutely. Pay them to stay home. Anybody who's
Right.
infected, pay them instead of, what was it in December? They had Delta Airlines ask them to change the day from 10 days to 5 if you were infected. And then, of course, Delta Airlines cut the number of sick days for their employees. So it was all about corporate America. And by the way, the person, the COVID czar, a guy named Jeff Zients, is not a physician, not a scientist, not a public health expert. He's a rich Democratic Party fundraiser. And so Walensky and Fauci and all these other people, you see, the so-called experts, they report to him. And that tells you what their priorities were all along. And so you're right. They want people back in these office buildings. They want people back at work instead of paying people to stay home if you're sick, which could cut the rate of infection very, very quickly. But their interests are not the interests of the people.
It's so against their core ideology to pay people not to physically work. Like, they literally physically get ill just thinking of the idea of paying somebody, and they're just like, you could hear it in the reports about the extra money for unemployment. They're paying to stay home. They're getting paid to stay home. I wish I had that deal. They're making these comments like it is something about it to them, to their core, and I believe it stems all roads lead back to slavery. All roads lead back to slavery. I think it comes from that. It's the idea: a slave, you're not going to work 12 hours. You only want to work 10 hours. What, you lazy? You get what I'm saying? It comes from that sort of thinking. Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just saying, remember the people on Fox News and a lot of Republicans that was like, oh my God, there are people making more money on unemployment than the people who are working. And I'm like, bro, right. How are you gonna make that statement and then not come to the obvious conclusion on what's wrong with our society?
The unemployment system isn't the problem.
Low wage work is the problem.
Right. You're not identifying the right problem here, sir.
It's not the lack of living wage work that I have seen deteriorate in my lifetime, where now there's gig work and people who are contract employees and people who don't have benefits and they have to work off the clock or clock out so they can make sure they don't get paid. It's horrible, but that's the problem. And when you don't have revolutionary politics, I mean, who are the so-called leftists in American politics, the so-called progressives, the squad, they're frauds. They're all frauds. And
we don't have a left. I think
it's very tiny. It's very small, but I think you can build it if you acknowledge that it's small, and that if you call people out and say, actually, you're not on the left, and you need to stop saying so. But politics has moved so far to the right in this country that, in ordinary, regular Democrats have the nerve to call themselves leftists, which is insane.
Bizarre. Yeah, it's just bizarre to me that they are considered left. Every time I watch Fox News, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone because the way they refer to Democrats, the Marxists over there, and
wish
there is Marxists over there.
I mean, it's so easy to whip people into a frenzy because Americans are so ill-informed. But I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone when I watch CNN or MSNBC.
That too.
I was recently in a captive audience and I had to listen to CNN. And I was like, and everything I heard, I was like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I just had to shut up and go with it until I could get away from that television.
So you're telling us you weren't screaming that out loud in your present company. You weren't screaming like, that's a lie. That's a lie.
I started and I was like, never mind. And that's the other thing that propaganda does. It's like then you start to feel like, okay, is anybody listening to me? People think I'm crazy, but
anyway. Right. They play CNN at the gym a lot, which I hate because you're propagandizing people everywhere, and people really believe that they've come to these opinions on their own. It's like, stop watching corporate media and cable news and reading it and see what your opinion becomes after that. Like, I truly had to do that in order for me to even understand where I was politically. But go ahead, Nick. I think you had something set up that you.
Yeah. I just want to add one last part to the other conversation I have, and I have one more thing I want you guys to react to. A lot of people think our society was destroyed by COVID. And I don't think that's the case. I think COVID exposed our society.
Mm-hmm.
COVID exposed our people as being extremely sickly, for one.
Yes.
So people ask a lot of questions. Why is the death count for COVID-19 so much higher in the United States? Yeah, we have bad misleadership, but there's bad neoliberal misleadership all over Europe. But why is our death total higher? Because we have a large amount of people with comorbidities in our country, and that comes from long work stress, our system that is not designed for us to take care of ourselves. Like I can do an entire live stream breaking down why we even had the deaths that we did. Like if you're working 60 hours a week, you got a family, you got a job, they're not giving you no time off. Can you really invest in time and getting healthy and going to the gym? I struggled with this as someone who was a former athlete. And then I became a worker. I was working 60 hours a week in real estate and sales. And I'm like, bro, I don't have no time to take care of myself like I used to. So now imagine over decades, you work in office or you work in real estate, or let's say you're in hard labor, years and years. And then you can't afford to eat green vegetables every morning. You can't afford, even if you can afford to eat like steak and kale, you working a job. You got a quick trip down the street, or are you gonna go home, cook a meal? Your boss gonna yell at you for taking a long lunch? Because I used to do that back when I was an athlete. I was like, guys, I gotta take long lunches. I can't eat trash food. But average people can't do this. Nope. So again, imagine decades of brutal capitalism wearing you down. You can't afford to see the doctor. Right. This is my family, so you don't go health checkups that often. This leads to a morbidly sick society. On top of not having health care, then that would lead to COVID killing people. Like that is what happens on top of everything else. But go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, we have a lot of obesity, high blood pressure, everything that you just mentioned. People who don't have health care, and everybody talks about Obamacare. Obamacare basically gave you the right to buy health insurance that you couldn't afford. People bad quality food. So this country was ripe for being decimated by a pandemic. And of course, if everyone doesn't have access to healthcare, and of course, if you have neoliberal policies that cut the number of hospital beds, well, yeah, you'll have a higher death rate than people have elsewhere in the world. So it revealed the unhealthiness of the society, and it's all neoliberalism and austerity. It's all capitalism. That deprives people of even people who never go to the doctor or rely on the emergency room, or are rural places where there's no hospital. Living here in New York City, where I have my, a choice of hospitals, I can't imagine living someplace where the nearest hospital is 100 miles away. I don't understand that. And they are closing rural hospitals left and right because they aren't profitable enough.
150,000 beds. I'm going to pass it to you, Nick. 150,000 beds for a population of over 30 million people. I think it's absurd. 150,000 beds is our capacity. Something like something like 150,000 beds is all we have. It's absurd. Go ahead, Nick.
So I guess we covered it. So we got about 10 minutes here. So I'm gonna do this. Let's do this part here. So I'm trying to figure out what story because one of these stories we're not gonna get to. I'll try to figure out which one we're gonna do. Do you have something you want to share?
It's a segment of the interview she just recently did.
Yeah, let's do that.
I wanted to ask her about. It's about a 3-minute section of the video that you had
let's
on.
Wrap with that. Let's wrap with that.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask her about this because to me, this entire interview was profound. This entire interview with Dr. Anthony. I don't want to say his name wrong. Montero.
Dr. Anthony Montero, yes.
Yeah, I've seen this twice already. Like, Nick, go watch this over and over. Yeah, it's a very, very good interview.
I gotta watch it. I was checking out a little bit.
Let me right here, share, and I have it queued up already. So let me just play it. Again, it's about 2 minutes. So let me set it up right here. This section, that he talks about, I just want to ask you about it.
Wants to take this even further. This is an administration committed to provocation and war. As to the left, it's not only we didn't really want him, we wanted something better than Biden. The question is, did you even know what Biden was? Did you understand that Biden was a reclaiming, a restoration of Hillary Clinton's campaign? Let's not fantasize about what this Democratic Party is. And I include in that its so-called left wing, which is never going to take over the Democratic Party. I don't care what the Democratic Socialists of America or Bernie Sanders or any of them think. You're not going to take over the Democratic Party. The Republicans who have left Trump's party have a better chance of taking it over than you do. So, like Malcolm X said, you've been took, you've been had, you've been bamboozled. The left was not present as an independent ideological and political force in the 2020 election. Wasn't present. It abandoned the interests of the working class. And when I put it like that, I'm not saying that the majority or good part of the working class didn't vote for Biden. I'm saying the left abandoned the interests of the working class. And it did it in so many different ways, ideologically and theoretically. It is the 1619 Project. It is LGBTQ. It is intersectionality. It's all of this that obscures the interest of working people. And the left, and I don't know that this has ever really happened in this country, a left that abandons the working class, that talks about a socialism without the working class. I've never heard of such a thing, which means then that it is and I've inverted commas, a left controlled by, financed by, pretty much organized by the ruling elite. And as Democrats, they're like the left wing of the Democrats that shame and put down and call out all of those forces dissatisfied with the Democratic Party as a party who would seek to leave the Democratic Party by a left route. So you're terrorized back into it by the loudmouth Bernie Sanders.
I'm going to stop it there because he could literally we can have him keep going on and on. But that last point, if you could just kind of speak to that he made, or any part of it actually, because all of it was great.
Yeah, it's Danny Haifong and I on the Left Lens, interviewing Dr. Anthony Montero, who was a longtime contributor to Black Agenda Report. And he reminds me of something that the late Glenn Ford used to say. He used to say, was talking about Obama's campaign, and he said, the anti-war movement and Goldman Sachs were on the same side. And I think that's what Tony was talking about. That it's what some of what we've been talking about, that there isn't a real left, that people are brainwashed, harangued, harassed into supporting a party that they know doesn't serve the interests of the people. You don't have a choice. Do you want Trump? It's always somebody. Trump was the perfect foil for them. Right. Well, you don't have a choice. You're wasting your vote if you don't vote at all. If you vote for someone else, if you vote for the Green Party, it's your fault the Democrats lose. What's the big deal if the Democrats lose? What do we get? But that is what we have right now. We have a phony left. And it's really scary. A lot of these people actually, some of them are cynics, but some of them really think of themselves as progressives. But there is no, especially in electoral politics and presidential politics, there is no left presence at all, as Tony was saying. The most basic things that a leftist should be advocating were absent. Biden said there's not going to be any Medicare for all. That's not going to happen. So don't support him. What are you supporting him for? We know what this happened. We've seen people die because they can't get health care, or they have health insurance but end up going broke when they get sick. How can that not be a basic red line issue? But that's what happens when we live in this duopoly that people feel trapped in. And I'm saying feel trapped in, and I'm saying you don't have to be in it. And how many times do you have to be, as he said, bamboozled? How many times do you have to get Bill Clinton, who kicks people off of welfare and increases poverty, and Obama, who gives us his neoliberal health plan, and Biden, who he knows people want to raise the minimum wage. But then when it was time to do it, suddenly they said, well, there's a Senate parliamentarian. I never heard of the Senate parliamentarian making these decisions. So they lied. And that's the other thing. Biden lied to get votes. They know what people want. No action on student loan debt. No action on the things that people need the most. And I urge people to watch the whole interview. It was a lot of fun. If you
it is
on YouTube.
Watch it.
I'm immediately about to go to that. I watched a little bit of it, but that clip, that was extremely profound. I appreciate you joining us with us, Margaret. I want to get you out of here. We would love to do this again. You guys are our allies and friends at the Black Agenda Report. I think we need to build a solidarity with independent networks that are actually calling speaking truth to power. I'm gonna stay in chat with you guys just for a little bit after Margaret leaves. But before I do that, before we send you off, is there anything you want to plug, promote, or any last thoughts you want to give on the general topic? And I want to talk about the topic when Margaret leaves, guys, just for a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Any last thoughts?
Yes, I just want to tell people to go to blackagendareport.com, because last week our special issue was about Ukraine. So we had a lot of good commentary there. We'll have a new issue on Wednesday, obviously, but go there now and you can see our commentary, the statement from Black Alliance for Peace. I urge people to go to blackallianceforpeace.com and to see, to get resources on Ukraine, because it's a big issue. And we want to, as much as we can, get people away from that propaganda and tell people where they can find the resources to be able to make informed decisions and to educate themselves. So thank you both. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well said, Margaret. Thank you for coming on. Make sure you guys support and subscribe.
Let me say one more thing.
Yeah,
let me say one more thing before she takes off. So we're planning a third-party summit, and I've sent out the invitations, but I saved yours because I knew you were coming on, so I just wanted to let you know. I'm going to be sending you the invitation for that third-party summit. It's March 18th through the 20th.
All right.
Danny in particular, when I sent he was like, make sure you reach out to Margaret. And I'm like, yeah, I got an interview with her tonight because he said you would be great. So that's forthcoming, and that's all I wanted to plug.
I'll be on the lookout for it. Thank you both.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Have a good one, Margaret.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Peace out.
So what I want to do, just to wrap up the stream, like I said, we can just have a little chill chat to wrap up as Margaret leaving here. I do want to respond to the clip. I want to get Margaret thought, and then we can kind of respond afterwards. There's so many things he said that were profound in the clip we played, but I do want to get back to one point where he was like, I don't know why you guys are shocked. We know who these people are. We know who these people are. Like, we know who Bill Clinton was. We know who Biden was. Do you want to roll it back and play it for a little bit?
Yeah. Because the Bill Clinton part, like I had so many timestamps for this video.
Yeah,
you saw it.
That whole clip, I
was
like, God damn, this is good. This is good. So go ahead.
I'll play it. Let's see if this is far enough. Let me see.
Or Bernie Sanders or any of them think you're not going to take over the Democratic Party. The Republicans who have left Trump's party have a better chance of taking it over than you do.
That is so fucking
You know, like Malcolm X said,
Hey,
you've been
I'm gonna stop it
took,
right
you've been
there.
had, you've been
Oh, let me
bamboozled.
shoot. Hold on.
Oh.
Let me stop it right. Oh yeah,
The left
what the
was
hell?
not present as an independent ideological and
Let me
political
just
force.
cut it off. There we go. I'll put it back on. I looked over because I wasn't looking at the screen when he said that one part. I'm gonna say, let me see what Nick's reaction is. But that part hit me hard. Go ahead.
That was fire. Because where's the lie? He said the never Trumpers, like the former Republicans, guys, do not get twisted. They 100% took over the party. Like, do you guys think they haven't? The Lincoln Project boys
taking over the party.
Like, you know, Cenk Uygur had he had one of the Lincoln Project dudes on TYT. He had him on. They were talking about Trump.
I saw it. No, I saw that. I saw that one. The one with the I don't know, maybe multiple. The bald one with the glasses. I saw that one. I saw it.
So
Yeah.
guys, you had
okay.
You had a ton of people who used to support George Bush, right? They were George Bush Republicans. Nicole Wallace, like, she's MSNBC co-host, right? She was like George Bush, like spokesperson, speechwriter. Chad, what was her exact title? I'm blanking on the exact role that
she was a communications director or something like that, wasn't she?
She was like his Jen Psaki, right? Something like that.
Yes. No, not the press secretary. She was a communications director, I think.
But now, then she became a resistance fighter under Donald Trump.
So weird.
So you see, the Democratic Party is running on funding the police more. You see that they are funding Israel more as they are bombing Syria and claiming more land illegally from Palestine. You see them funding genocides in Yemen. You see them using sanctions that are pretty much starving 1/3 of the world right now, according to the last study I just saw on this. But hey, we gotta resist the evils of Putin. Y'all see this? But anyway, that's who took over the Democrat Party. So people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Biden lied about getting us a public option. I can't believe he lied about giving us a $15 minimum wage. And I'm sitting here like, bro. So you guys think that the Lincoln Project invested millions of dollars to get Biden elected? You think these big pharma and big tech oligarchs spend all this money getting Biden elected just for him to screw them over? Like, it didn't make sense at face value. But they won it at the end of the day, and that guy called out the progressive movement for being the cucks like they are. You wasn't at our reaction when we listened to the State of the Union, but do you see Pramila Jayapal's response speech?
Yeah, I saw that.
It somehow and people who
pissed off Rashida though. Didn't it piss off Rashida or somebody?
Oh no, sorry. So no, Rashida Tlaib did a response video to Joe Biden.
Yeah,
at the progressive State of Union response speech, and it was horrific. She was pretending that like Biden is doing everything he can. It's just a few senators, Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, that is blocking his agenda. So these people are treating us like we're dumb, and we don't know how. Well, I guess a lot of people are dumb, but they don't know how. Like, we don't know how the branches of government work, right? So people say, "Oh, if you're disappointed with Joe Biden, this is what Rashida Tlaib was saying." Yeah, man, if only we could have got Build Back Better. If it wasn't for Kristen Sinema, if it wasn't for Joe Manchin. But I'm like, okay, that's the legislative branch of government. You know what Joe Biden's in charge of? The executive branch. You know, the people who write the checks to DHS, the people who write the checks to the military, the people who you literally the commander in chief. You dictate the direction of the state, right? Well, this is what they say, right? I don't believe I don't believe the president got that much power, to be honest. You guys see who actually called Trump, but this is how they present it, right? If you look at all the reasons why I'm upset with Joe Biden, it has absolutely nothing to do with the legislative branch. Or are we clear? I'm talking about funding ICE more. What do Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have to do with Joe Biden funding ICE more? What do Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have to do with Joe Biden illegally holding Afghanistan funds that is starving 20 million people? During the speech, Rashida Tlaib, who is Palestinian, by the way, she was like, I stand with the Ukrainian people. No mentions of the Palestinians being bombed by the weapons that the squad helped send to Israel. I get off to a tangent. Here.
No, that interview, you're gonna love that interview because he talks about this. The Dr. Anthony, the person we had.
You want to play a little bit more?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I have it up. Actually, I have it right here. So let me
let's
play
get
another
something.
good. Let me play another good spot where he speaks. We'll talk about it at the other end right here.
A tactical position out of it. If Black workers have more in common with the big capitalists because they claim to be woke than they do with a poor white worker, then what is Black liberation? How do you define Black liberation then?
Did he just blow your mind? He blew your mind right there, huh? Did he blow your mind right there?
I was saying, to be clear, but I was saying no shit because it's not like necessarily my mind being blown. It's just the ideology of the liberal class being just fucking, and I would say the boutique left as well. That's who he's critiquing as well.
Yeah, that's who he's critiquing.
Is being dismantled. Like I'm just in awe at how easily he's dismantling the ideology of the people that we've been going after, CJ. Like this is the
exactly
boutique left that we have been calling out on this show, right? We've been blacklisted by a lot of people for doing it, but it had to be said.
It had to be said, and I don't mind. It was a righteous cause, and as we lose people because of a righteous cause, and I'm fine with that. But I rewind it back just a little bit so you can hear the whole context.
Black people have less in common, Black workers have less in common with white workers than they do with the...
Hang on 1 second. That point there.
And that Aristotle on up, it's only in the Anglo-American world, and especially the United States, that politics gets reduced to elections. So if you separate genuine politics from elections, now that doesn't mean that on occasion or in certain circumstances, certain people run for office. But that should not be the whole thing of the left.
We say that all the time.
Should be identified with its ideas. And, we play the long game. And nothing is more powerful than ideas whose time has come. And I think, set aside this fake left, this celebrity left, this cable news left, this left that is more comfortable, would you say Goldman Sachs or...
He's literally talking about the people with MSNBC contracts. Like Sam Peter, for example, by the way. But go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, this whole interview is great. That's why I know you probably, because I was sending if the audience don't know, I was sending the time codes in the DM that we share. You was probably like, what the hell is this motherfucker?
Yo, if you watching this, hit this boy up and say RBN want to interview this man right now.
Yeah, I do want. I'm gonna reach out to Danny and see if we can get an interview with him. But listen to the rest of this right here.
Really the military-industrial complex than they are with the working class. And I have evidence of that, by the way. I don't know, we could call names and identify people, but there are people who actually say that Black people have less in common, Black workers have less in common with white workers than they do with the 0.1%. That the woke capitalists, among them Joe Biden and so on, are more favorable to Black folk than the working class. Well, besides the fact that it's a distortion, I think it is so limited and narrow in its perspective that you can't develop a tactical position out of it. If Black workers have more in common with the big capitalists because they claim to be woke than they do with a poor white worker, then what is Black liberation?
Right. So I want to discuss this point, and he makes a good point. like, how are we going to strategize when people on the team are capitalists, or these people that's on that side? It makes it hard to have a strategic plan. He's pointing out it makes it hard to have a strategic plan if we're teaming up with the boutique left.
It's a shame, CJ, that, and this is very important that he had to say this, right? It's very important that we come on these shows and we have to explain why it's a horrific idea to join a violent capitalist imperialist institution like the Democratic Party. But we have to say it. Like Anthony here has to break down why it's ridiculous to be a worker movement and join hands with the capitalists. Like, these are very simple concepts. Guys, whose side do you think the capitalist is on? Do you think they're fighting for worker power? Like, when these progressives tell you guys, oh, we can put Joe Biden, the senator who literally was a shield for the credit card companies for 40 years, the one who literally created student loan debt. Well, I wouldn't say he created. That's me misspeaking. I would say he amplified the problem.
Absolutely did.
He amplified the problem, amplified the prison industrial complex as we know it. But then people were saying, oh, if we just wish hard enough, if we believe in the power of friendship, we can push Biden to the left. And I think this is revolutionary, undisciplined, that I'm doing more reading, more research. I think this shit is on purpose. Like, and I told you guys I had a lot of thoughts on like Bernie and how, and I remember back at the time I used to think like, yo, this is good. This is a good idea to at least get people revolutionized and radicalize people. But what has been the end result of Bernie's movement, guys? Like we're being driven down a corporate police state where a bunch of leftists are joining the CIA and the Democratic Party regularly. So now there have been a lot of talks about how there have been a lot of anti-communist psyops that was waged during the Cold War to prop up organizations like DSA, to prop up ideas like Social Democrat and democratic socialism, which is anti-communism. And they plant these organizations, these groups like DSA. They plant people like Justice Democrats, AOCs, to sell and promote the idea of socialism and anti-capitalism, but then be like, okay, these capitalists are our allies. And I'm doing my research. I have a lot of friends. A lot of my people to my left, a lot of my friends on the left, that telling me like, bro, a lot of these democratic socialists, a lot of these social democrats, you know, these people that say I'm anti-capitalist, but I don't like communism. That shit was a psyop because they saw the American communist movement growing. So they had to counteract that. And they had capitalists that was like, okay, I have criticism of capitalism, but I don't want to call myself communist, so I'm going to call myself a democratic socialist. And these people funnel people who otherwise are anti-capitalist to the capitalist Democratic Party. Honestly, guys, if they didn't do that, I wouldn't mind their existence because I don't mind people who are a little bit to my right. The same way there are a lot of people to my left, right? But I realized recently that their goal is to shift people away from a true democratic system, a true dictatorship of which is the Marxist-Leninist ideology that we talk about. They move people away from that, demonize those people as tankies, demonize them people as being fringe outside the box, outside the Overton window, while at the same time they will say shit like Jim Crow Joe is my friend. This is when I started to realize like, oh shit, this is what this guy is saying. Not only are these people misled, like I thought these people may be useful idiots, they were actually doing unbelievable damage to the workers' movement, black liberation, as he said. Now I got much more to say, but I know I've ran a while. Go ahead, CJ. I want to get your thoughts, and we can walk.
No, that's great. I just want to play a little bit more and give us some more time, a little more to talk about.
I have another fun segment to do after that. Like we can.
Oh no, then let's do that one, and then we can get back to this.
I wouldn't say no rush. I was just saying that I actually want to do.
You do have something else.
Yeah. So
okay,
then we can probably make this like a 90-minute to 100-minute episode today. I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let me find the one spot that I want you to hear, which is
no rush. I was just letting you know.
Do you even know what the left is? I think that's it. Here we go. 25. Okay. All right. So let me. I already have it up. Let me just move it back to 25, and then we'll start to there. Here, 25. I wonder if we've already heard a little bit of it. Right here.
Vote by the Biden administration.
Well, you're absolutely right, Tony. You reminded me of a couple of things said by our departed comrades, Bruce Dixon and Glenn Ford. In 2016, Bruce Dixon called it from the beginning. He said that Bernie Sanders is a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. He will end up endorsing Hillary Clinton. He called it completely. And I'm remembering what Glenn said when Barack Obama ran in 2008, that the anti-war movement and the so-called left were on the same side as Goldman Sachs.
Absolutely.
So this is a problem of, and it goes back even further, actually, of long-standing about what do we have a left? I mean, I think we have to say it's tiny, and as politics moves to so far to the right in this country. All kinds of people are allowed to call, like the average Democrat has no business calling him or herself a leftist. It's just absurd to me. I mean, and the word leftist has lost its meaning, I feel, in this country. And that's why people can be pro-austerity or pro-war or pro-compromise or act against the interests of working people, as you said, and still be considered leftists.
That part right there, Marianne Williamson, pro-war, imperialist, but she can still be considered a leftist, and that's what this clip is speaking to.
Yeah, CJ, and there are progressives who like Marianne Williamson, and I give her credit for her position on reparations, right? But then we had our position on her recently because there have been rumors of her being like the leading like favorite to be like the 2024 progressive candidate. I'm like, are you guys crazy? And I will just point out her position on Israel-Palestine, right? Where she says stupid shit like, oh, Israel has the right to defend himself, aka Israel has the right to illegally seize Palestinian homes.
Right.
So, and then she was like, when Biden was pulling out troops out of Afghanistan, she was repeating nonsense like, oh, what about Afghan women? We got to stay Afghanistan. So it's like, your foreign policy is horrific. And you guys are propping this up. Like, it's not unreasonable when we say we require you to be an anti-imperialist, anti-NATO, anti-Western chauvinism to be a leftist. Like, that's not, to me, a high bar. Like, there are a lot of people in that group where I have plenty of issues I disagree with them with. But even on those disagreements, I'm not saying, yo, I disagree with you on this issue, but you're an anti-capitalist, you're an anti-imperialist, but you're not a leftist because I disagree with you on this issue. I will acknowledge that you're a leftist if you're anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist, but I would just say, oh, he's a leftist I disagree with on this issue. But if you're not even at the anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist position, how the fuck can you call yourself a leftist? Like you said, like it's beyond absurd.
Yeah.
But people repeat, like people will look at us like we're crazy when we say the Squad and Bernie Sanders and the Justice Democrats are not leftist or institutions and public figures. But this is just basic shit. Like this is basic shit that they don't know.
We're gonna ask him to come on the show. We're gonna have somebody reach out to him to come on the show and help us here because I could use some education for him. He talks some really good stuff. But go ahead with your final segment here.
Yeah. This is gonna be a fun like discussion story. I want to talk about this with Margaret, but we didn't have enough time. But I think it should still be a good story to cover, right? So we was talking about Ukraine, and on this channel, there have been a very few amount of people that have been getting this issue right. Like you see, like even giant channels that are considered to be anti-establishment. We're not afraid to say names on here. Like I'm looking at it, like Breaking Point's coverage, Kyle Kalinski's coverage, who I used to like some of his foreign policy takes, despite some of my criticism of him. But even he was like horrific on this issue. Right?
Yeah, pretty bad.
There are a lot of people who are getting this wrong. There are a lot of people who are erasing basic facts. There are a lot of people who are pretending that like Russia is doing anything unique. And there's like this whitewashing that's coming from, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to put it. Like as a black person, and this has been driving any colonized people crazy with the whole stand with Ukraine thing, where people are pretending like this is the first humanitarian crisis ever.
Right.
Because they want to know what it's really about. People were saying white people being victims of imperialism and war, right? So I'm going to get to the point here because I don't want this segment to be too long. So the point of this segment is I'm bringing up the hypocrisies I am seeing with this culture and the coverage on Ukraine that is driving me crazy. And I'm gonna show you guys one of them. And this is kind of stuff where people try and pretend that Russia is this unique evil, even though Joe Biden, I mean, Putin couldn't hold a candle to Biden in terms of war crime. Are we clear? Are we? And I want you guys to understand something. Me saying that does not even remotely make me a Putin puppet or someone who likes Putin. It's an objective fact that if you look at civilian suffrage, the amount of colonized people that have been harmed, Putin cannot hold a candle to Joe Biden. They can't hold the candle to the state, but people pretend otherwise. Check this tweet out. Look at this tweet, CJ. And then I'm going to show you guys some more ridiculousness. And I am seeing this everywhere. Like, people, because there's a strong amount of propaganda that's going against Russia to the point where 80% of the American people say, oh, we should institute a no-fly zone in Ukraine, which will lead to World War III. Why are people so Russia-phobic right now? Because of shit like this. Look at this tweet. This is how people are detained at anti-war rallies by Russia. As if we didn't have a giant George Floyd protest where people would
right.
Like, do you guys
right? You're upset at that?
Like,
but you're not upset at the shit that happened here?
I condemn this as someone who's an abolitionist, right? But why?
Absolutely.
You see, though, as a black man, I am being driven crazy, and feel free to interrupt me anytime, CJ. Because you see the erasure of the crimes of our Western society. Oh my God, this is what they do in Russia. We are way better over here. This is, bro, you understand that using tear gas is a war crime? They use tear gas on their civilians and no one bats an eye. I was tear gassed at the George Floyd protest. I saw children at the KC protest in George Floyd. I covered it live on the ground. Who was tear gassed, which is a war crime by our government. But you think, oh, it's what Russia does. And I want to get one last thing I want to say. I want to get your thoughts, CJ, and I have one more thing to share. It's actually funny. There are some people who like legitimately get mad at me because I'm not interested in really criticizing Putin. Like, why, bro? We live in the imperial core. Even if I did criticize Putin, what would that lead to? You got Russians on the ground right now, as we speak, protesting Putin. Do we have Americans on the ground right now protesting the fact that Joe Biden is leading a genocide in Yemen? Do we have Americans on the ground protesting the fact that Biden is selling weapons to Israel, who is bombing Syria and claiming Palestinian lands? Oh, is there a protest about Biden bombing Somalia? No. So why would I waste my time criticizing a guy who's already been criticized by the constituents of their country? My job is to criticize the oligarchs and the war criminals of my state. Of my state. What the fuck do I have to do with Putin? I'm going to call out Jim Crow Joe because he imprisons 1/4 of the world's prison population. Right? I have one more thing to share, but CJ, you got any thoughts on that?
No, because they want you to jump on the bandwagon. You don't have the mass psychosis formation. You're not following the propaganda's out there. You're not taking the bait, Nick. So they're upset. That's why anybody who does not fall in line of the zombies, that person that's kind of doing his own thing, that's the person that's out of line. So that's how I see it. Go ahead.
No, there's one more. I could do a lot more, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna give you guys one more example of the kind of psyop I am seeing in the face of this Ukrainian crisis that drive me crazy. I'm asking you guys, or I'm asking the chat, and this is a rhetorical question. What is a Russian oligarch? What is a Russian oligarch? Like you see everyone in the media, you see all the people who are friends with like Bill Gates, for example. They love Elon Musk. They love our billionaire capitalists, but then they're like, these Russian oligarchs, we need to sanction them because these people are evil. The Russian oligarchs, they're an oligarchy. They're an oligarchy. Hold, freeze, and pause. What does the Russian oligarch has over the American billionaire? Do people really want to pretend that these Russian oligarchs, you guys, like if you take like 100 of these Russian oligarchs, I'm about to write a paper on this. I've been doing research on this. If you take 100 Russian oligarchs, their wealth does not even touch our top 3 biggest wealth holders. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and the Walton family shits on every single Russian oligarch combined. And I didn't even touch the rest of big tech. I didn't touch Wall Street. So what the fuck are you guys talking about? Russian oligarch.
Then what makes them an oligarch to you? If it's not money, if it's not the amount of money and the influence they have, then what makes them an oligarch? And what I saw, this clip, when you bring up oligarch, and Dr. Jason Johnson, this clip that it comes back to me when Nina Turner was on there. He was like, well, you work for a person who's part of the 1%. Why you don't call him an oligarch? Like, do you really not understand what an oligarch is? You're talking about Bernie Sanders, who's an elected person who should have influence in politics because we elected him to do that, versus Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg, who aren't elected officials, and we're only listening to them because they're rich. Like, you're a doctor, Jason Johnson, and you don't know this is basic oligarch 101.
I'm gonna pull a definition for you guys because I'm not here to defend Russian oligarchs as well. Because based on what I know, Russian oligarchs, they hold a large amount of influence in their society. But if you guys want to understand where I'm coming from, let me explain this concept to you guys. Because even the people in the West will acknowledge this. They will say, "Oh, the Putin has the oligarchs under his thumb." What? Putin has the oligarchs under his thumb? Do you guys realize it's the exact opposite in this country? So they're saying that the oligarchs are afraid of Putin in the centralized government of Russia. If you're a leftist, what's the criticism here? We want these motherfuckers to be afraid of us. So you understand, in Russia, the oligarchs are afraid of Putin, but in our country, our politicians are afraid of the billionaires and the oligarchs. Pause and hold. I'll repeat that one more time. In Russia, the oligarchs are afraid of Putin. In America, the politicians are afraid of the billionaire. Do you guys see the problem? Now I'm gonna show you guys the definition here. Let's have a blast. Can you guys want to see the propaganda? You guys want to know why I'm covering this and why I may clip it later? Check this out. This is the definition of an oligarch. And now check this, especially in Russia. Shut the fuck up. Look at this definition.
They added that shit in there.
Yeah, look at that propaganda. I did not do that shit.
It's everywhere, Nick. It's everywhere. It's in the dictionary. It's Wikipedia. It's everywhere.
So look at the definition, guys. So even when you read the definition, you will still say, why the fuck do you add the especially in Russia part? So a very rich business leader with a great deal of political influence. What? Wonder
Bill
why
Gates.
I've seen that.
Bill Gates is navigating pandemic. He's navigating. Bill Gates is the one that's leading that. Why? Why are we listening to Bill Gates? He's not a doctor of sciences. He's from computers. That's because of his money. We would not be listening to him for his money. Like American billionaires is the definition of oligarch. They're the literal definition of it, but we don't want to call them that.
Oh no! In this country, CJ, they're not oligarch. They are a smart businessman who make calculated investment decisions that everyone should look up to. Guys, and CJ was on point because he kind of he said exactly what I was leading to. So you have Bill Gates, who's a tech powerhouse. So he already dominates one industry. So I want to ask you guys, how does someone who makes his fortune, his fame in tech, how does he become an influential public health expert? They had this guy on the World Health Forum giving some fucking speech. And I'm like, dude, he's a fucking tech nerd. Why the hell are you guys asking him about vaccines? And also, so not only is he a big tech powerhouse, he's in charge of public health policy apparently. But look at this. Do you guys know this? He also one of the largest, he is the largest private farmland holder in the United States. And also, check this out. Do they tell you about this? The plot against public education. We talk about all the time on the show how public education is shit. Because billionaires like Bill Gates are literally buying public education. Like, bro, so you want to talk about Russian oligarchs? Once again, I'm not denying the fact that Russians have oligarchs, but their oligarchs don't have shit on ours because Putin got these motherfuckers under his thumb.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Bill Gates is writing public health policy. He is literally dictating the education that our youth getting. Like he's a big tech influencer, bro. And this is just one billionaire. And we just did a story, CJ. Remember how we covered how Amazon bought the Black Congressional Caucus?
Yes.
We have the entire Black Congressional Caucus that is bought off by Jeff Bezos. And they own the Washington Post. But you want to talk about Russian oligarchs? Fuck that. At Revolutionary Blackout, people can get mad at us because I'm not buying it, bro. I grew up during the Iraq War. I remember the bullshit. And I am watching this when Margaret Kimberly said she never seen pro-war propaganda. I will also add propaganda into that. Yeah. I have never seen it like this.
Like it's been turned up, like past what I've ever seen on both levels. And I wasn't even thinking about the police state, but now that you mention it, it's actually like crime rate up, crime like it's like crime rate up. Like how much crime? I started looking into those numbers, and it was just like what I thought, Nick. It's like going from you're going from 50 robberies to 60 robberies, up 30%. But if you just say 50 to 60, you see how it's up 10 total. But if you use the percentage, it's a more effective way of scaring the population.
Hey, you want to know what's even dumber about this, CJ? And I don't know why I didn't bring this up before. I brought it up in the live stream I did earlier before. They also say, oh my God, the crime rate is going up, so we got to fund the police more. Guys, the crime rate is literally dictated by how many fucking arrests and murders they put on record. So these motherfuckers literally inflate the crime rate, and this is what they do. They will literally just report more crime because they get more funding. They get more funding, so they report more crime. Then they say, oh my God, crime is out of control, give us more money. And then whenever they don't report a lot of crime, they say, oh my God, the crime rate is dropped. We're doing a good job, give us more money. No matter what happens, no matter what the result, give us more money.
Like, there's no way for them to even know what the real crime rate is because so many crimes are not even reported. That's the first thing. And then two, the people who is in charge of solving crime is the ones we're depending on to report the accurate of crime. That's a conflict of interest. That's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, you said
that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, you said exactly what I was about to say on that. Like it's such a blatant conflict of interest. And once again, if you want to complain about Russian oligarchs, what are you doing? Like, what are the Russian oligarchs doing that ruining your life? Let me give you guys another example. I said I would do one, but I just thought of another one. You know our defense secretary right now, and there's been many examples of this, but this is the most recent one. Lloyd Austin literally comes from Raytheon, right? He's a fucking millionaire. He's rich. Come from the weapon defense contracting industry, gets a job in one of the highest office in our government, in the executive branch, defense secretary. But you want to talk about Russian oligarchy? Like, bro, nothing. Like, there is no corporate state that is more tied to corporate power more than ours. Do you guys understand that? There's no bigger merger between corporate and state than ours. You have Michael Bloomberg. Another example. I can give you guys examples all day. Michael Bloomberg recently, I didn't report on the story about it because I didn't really care about it, to be honest. But back to my point here, Michael Bloomberg is spending a ton of money because he investing in races, and he's gonna pour money towards centrist Democrats. So essentially, any Democrat that don't support Medicare for all, anyone who has a progressive challenger, Mike Bloomberg recently just came out and said he's gonna fund their challengers to stop the Democratic Party from going left. But go ahead and so you in this country where elections are decided by money at around a 95% rate, 95% of the time you can predict an election based on who raised the most money. But then you have billionaires like Mike Bloomberg say we're going to fund candidates who are against healthcare. How is that not a billionaire takeover of the election system, unlike any other country has ever seen? But go ahead and talk about Russian oligarchs. Russian oligarchs don't hold a candle to Mike Bloomberg.
Not at all.
He has his own media institution called fucking Bloomberg.
They didn't even try to give it another name. He just said, name it after me.
That's funny. Name it after me. So they control farmland like Bill Gates. They control public education. They control public health policy. They run ads to help people they want to get elected, which they always have done. But you guys want to bitch and complain and pretend that Russian oligarchs is something that is unique? So that's the segment. Anything else you want? Any comment? Any good comments you saw? Anything else you want to add? We about 90
No,
minutes.
this last comment here, he kind of calls out a bunch of the oligarchs that we have. So if you didn't know who are some of the American oligarchs, here goes some of their names right here: Zuckerberg,
Yeah, I was just going on top of my head.
Gates, Bezos, Musk. I don't know if Musk is an American citizen, maybe he is, or South African. And then the Koch, of course, the Koch brothers, but now it's just one that's still alive, are some of the top oligarchs in the U.S. It's so funny that it's such a basic definition for what an oligarch. You have money, and your money is what allows you to give influence. Like, so you can't get around it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not like there can be a different interpretation. That's literally what Bill Gates is. That's literally what Jeff Bezos is. That's literally what Zuckerberg is. So that's my final comments on that. Just love this last comment. The comments have been great. This has been a great stream.
Yeah, I was surprised when we got Margaret Kimberly, and I do got breaking news because guys, I've been working on guests, right? Especially now with all the craziness. I was looking like, all right, who's getting this shit right? So we had a conversation, we debated about defund the police, but I love this brother. Garland Nixon, I'm trying to give him this weekend. We working on a rough time. So Garland Nixon, I'm working on that. Kid from Harlan's Media, he also will be joining us sometime next week. I may get him for Nick and CJ show. We see. But I need to get Harlan's Media on here as well. But what you got going? Like, you got this new weekly series, daily series, Monday through Friday it seems. What you got planned tomorrow, CJ?
Tomorrow, I'm still trying to secure an interview. I'm not saying this is tomorrow, but I'm working on doing something with Dr. Kareem Batesh with Danny Haifeng to talk about China. What's real and what's not real. Yeah, I was like, wow, he's actually in China. Great perspective from Dr. Kareem, and then you already know Danny.
Guys, Kareem is a real one, man. I talk to Kareem all the time outside of this and stuff, and we still have the International Solidarity Summit. I'm planning it behind the scenes, and we're gonna have Dr. Kareem Batesh, Dr. Peter Beatty, Saul Rod. You guys see him in International Legends Coalition. They're gonna bring in some hard-hitting international academics. You're gonna talk to them here soon. See that we're gonna have a meeting with them. But it's like, bro, we got a lot of great stuff planned. Like Dr. Kareem and my crew, International Leftists. We're gonna have a lot of great guests and panels coming up for you guys. Because we also starting me and Dr. Kareem and Dr. Peter. We may start like a morning show, like a political education show, like on Wednesday morning to kind of go more over like installing revolutionary discipline or historical analysis.
Yeah, that's great.
Gonna be more it's gonna be more of a nerdy show in the morning. Like that's something that we've been working on. Like we're gonna be the channel that like really puts back against anti-intellectualism. Like that's what the channel is gonna be. Mm-hmm. So that's some stuff we're working on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you want to say, CJ? Anything else you want to
no, I did check. I saw he's doing content now. He has a YouTube channel. I saw he has a couple of videos up. Dr. Kareem and his partner.
What's that guy named? The guy we just watched. The clip. I need.
Oh, that was Dr. Anthony Matero. I can give you the spelling.
He needs his own YouTube channel. I don't know what the hell he's
doing.
That's
what everybody was saying in his content. But he's if you Google him, he's a longtime activist. If you Google him, he has a long track record of being an activist. So, third party summit that's coming up in a few weeks. Make sure you check that out. March 18th through the 20th. It's really going to be everything. It's going to be like the General Strike Summit, but just talking about third parties and organizing. Afeni, she's going to be there. Ryan Knight will be there. Brianna Joy Gray will be there. You saw me shout out Margaret Kimberly. So a lot of the same faces I'm hoping to have, and just it's less about specifically the candidates and more about how to build a third-party infrastructure. Is it worth it to build a third-party infrastructure? Do we have time to build a third-party infrastructure with the climate crisis? So all of that wrapped into it. Make sure you check it out. That's that. And then tomorrow I'll be here for you left shit out at 3 p.m. And then tomorrow's Tuesday. So never mind. Wednesday I have Straight Out of Politics, so I almost got the days mixed up. So that's all I got, Nick.
Yeah, make sure you guys please. Great news. 14,000 subscribers. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we started our channel 1 year ago, April 1st. Our goal is to hit 15,000 subscribers by our 1 year anniversary. Now, if you do the math, technically we have been gaining 1,000 subscribers every month because we started 11 months ago. We have 14,000 subscribers. So in order for us to hit the goal that we set at the beginning of this year, and I remember when we said at the time, I was like, damn, maybe that's hella ambitious. I said I want us to hit 15,000 subscribers by our 1 year anniversary at the beginning of this year. And technically, we are on pace to do that. All we had to do is gain 1,000 subscribers this month, like we have done. So please do not allow us to underperform this month and allow us to not hit our objective despite us being on pace. Because you guys been sharing, you guys been helping. The algorithm has been helping us out. We got a lot of great new signups on Patreon. So if you guys want to continue to support us so we can give you guys more content, like Patreon is the way to go, guys. Like, please show support on there. That's all I have. Thank you guys for checking us out. CJ will be back with you guys tomorrow. I'm planning a lot of great shows for you guys. So I'll let you guys know when my shows are coming up. Like, you guys expect me this Saturday. Like, I'm planning, like I said, Garland Nixon will be with me on Saturday. I got a lot of great guests I got planned. So anyway, thank you guys for checking us out. This is Nick, CJ, Revolutionary Blackout. Sign out. Have a good one, comrades.